having trouble?
Yeah. Think I might be going crazy, Doc. Seem to be haunted by these visions of some evil version of myself. Except he wears cheap suits and he sounds like William F. Buckley, and I seem to be spreading this crazy around all my friends over Skype or something.
For everything, there is a time.
Yeah, and if I had a time machine, your ass would be grass, brother.
Ah, but even if you did that, would you not cause some universe-shattering paradox? After all, if you eliminated me, you'd eliminate your very reason for going back in time in the first place.
You know, a thought occurs.
Indeed. Do it.
In 1984, James Cameron had a literal fever dream, owing to one of those viruses you inevitably pick up on transcontinental flights. Possibly combined with the nervous exhaustion he suffered from his work on Piranha 2, The Spawning, from which he'd just been fired. And I buy that. Just watching Piranha 2 makes me nervous and exhausted, so I can imagine making it was a slow slog through hell. No wonder Cameron dreamed of a metal skeleton walking out of a wall of fire. Returning home, Cameron banged out a script that involved 2 killer robots sent back in time by an evil computer system. One was set to be the metal skeleton of his dreams, while the other was meant to be this kind of shape-shifting, liquid metal thing that not even Cameron could really imagine pulling off well back then. So he, and his producer-slash-co-writer-slash-wife, Gail Ann Hurd, scaled things back a bit, to 1 killer robot, and the human soldier charged with stopping it. This, naturally, led to further story changes that helped this film become the masterpiece it is today. Still loved and talked about by nerds and plebs alike. All for just $6.5 million. A shoestring budget, even for the time. This was the year after Return of the Jedi came out, and everybody knew that you couldn't make a sci-fi film for less than $10 million. Not unless you were someone like David Cronenberg, but shit, that was 10 million Canadian. Barely counts. Cameron used British money, and he made every cent count. He'd just spent months working in Italy, after all. And before that, he worked for Roger Corman. If there's anything a career path like that'll teach you, it's how to pinch every penny. And if there's anything that Cameron's career can teach all of us, it's how to use your reputation as a budgetary Scrooge to wring larger and larger budgets out of people for each subsequent film that you make. Provided they're all awesome successes. Terminator straddles that line between high-concept sci-fi fantasies and the cheap slasher films that were already paying bills all over Hollywood at the time. Some of the few who dare to criticize this thing say that it cleaves too closely to its horror movie heritage. But some people...
Boy's definitely got a corn cob up his ass.
Yeah. What Frost said. Because on top of everything else, Terminator's a film that proves the artificiality of genres. That truly great films transcend the thoughtless, lazy categorization systems that sadly characterize so much of movie so-called criticism. So let's criticize this fucker upright. What is Terminator, and why is it so damn great? Well, for one thing, it's a heartwarming coming-of-age story about an otherwise unremarkable everyday woman who discovers the hidden wells of strength within herself when she's forced to overcome adversity.
I mean, am I tough? Organized? I can't even balance my checkbook.
The adversity in this case just happens to be a killer robot from the future who looks like an Austrian bodybuilder. Sent back in time to kill her, because her child will one day lead a resistance movement against its creator.
Killing him, in effect, before he's even conceived. A sort of retroactive abortion?
In metaphorical terms, it's a story of generational warfare. Like the Hatfields and McCoys, if the McCoys were killer robots. Instead of the sins of the father being visited upon the son, the sins of the son, and from Skynet's perspective, anything but total submission is a sin, are retroactively visited upon the mother. Because Well, women pay for everything in this culture, one way or another. Is it fair? Nope. Fucking isn't. But rather than deal with basic unfairnesses, our society likes to throw up its hands and go, why bother? Hell, the apocalypse is just around the corner. People often ask me, why are you millennials so cynical? Why this obsession with dystopias that are pretty much just high school and sci-fi cosplay? Why the complete lack of imagination? The inability to conceive a future that isn't just like now? Well, gee, Hoss, I don't know. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that while we were growing up, half the adults were waiting for the bombs to drop so they could go play Mad Max in real life, and the other half were waiting for Jesus to spirit them out of their clothes so they could get front row seats for the 1,000-year heathen roast. Might have had something to do with it. In pure storytelling terms, Terminator takes the long way around the barn to justify what could have boiled down to just a feature-length chase scene. Plenty of movies are just that, but we aren't talking about any of them, unless they star Jamie Lee Curtis. And that's because the Terminator, as a concept, allows its film to bring up topics that are just too big for all those other chase scene movies I just slagged off on. Topics of free will, determinism, and the ever-shifting line between man and machine that is cybernetics.
The 600 series had rubber skin. We spotted them easy. But these are new. They look human. Sweat, bad breath, everything. Very hard to spot.
To pick just the obvious example, the film starts out in, and occasionally flashes forward to, a future where machines wage genocidal war on humankind, mopping up from the nuclear war they started a few years from now. That's pretty damn bleak even for 1984.
But there was one man who taught us to fight, to storm the wire of the camps, to smash those metal motherfuckers into junk. He turned it around. He brought us back from the brink. His name is Connor. John Connor. Your son, Sarah. Your unborn son.
Yet here comes Kyle Reese, soldier from the future, with a message from John Connor to his mom.
Thank you, Sarah, for your courage through the dark years. I can't help you with what you must soon face, except to say that the future is not set. You must be stronger than you imagine you can be. You must survive, or I will never exist. That's all.
If that message is true, and we can take it at face value, then it suggests, along with the mere presence of time travelers, that there is hope for a better tomorrow. After all, if we're going by what I call Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure rules, then time travel is a closed loop of reflexive causality, and all of Skynet's attempts at what Dr. Silverman calls a retroactive abortion are pointless. You can't alter the future. Indeed, your attempts to alter it have already occurred whether you know it or not.
Excellent!
Perhaps Skynet knows something about time travel that we don't, but why would we assume that? Just because it's the evil computer that destroyed the world? Shit, it doesn't even have a pre-war phone book in its database. The Terminator has to go hunt one of those up all by itself. And even then, it still has to go down the list of Sarah Connors. Then there's the whole issue of John Connor's birth. Was Kyle Reese always John Connor's father? Was he always fated, for lack of a better word, to go back in time and hook up with his commander's mom? The film sure implies the hell out of this by having adult John give younger Kyle a picture of Sarah. A picture we see destroyed in the middle of the movie and created by film's end. But if that's true, then adult John was talking completely out of his ass when he told his dad to tell his mom the future is not set. Is that message genuine? Or is it just what Sarah needs to hear? A little morale boost from her son, the great military leader. After all, telling people what they need to hear is Great Military Leadership 101. And regardless of whether he's right about the fate thing, he is certainly right about her being stronger than she believes herself to be. The thing that got me this time is how Sarah saves Kyle's life, just a few chase scenes after he first saves hers.
No, Reese, no! They'll kill you.
You're in the Cadillac. Let me see your hands now.
No shit. Somebody knows how to deal with the LAPD. Yeah, there you go. Don't give them any more excuses. The human side of this story seems trapped in a causal loop, while the machine side of the story seems to assume time travel works according to what I call Back to the Future rules, with each alteration to the past creating a new timeline that supersedes the old. It's actually kind of maddening. Otherwise, the only thing Skynet could possibly do to prevent John Connor's birth would be to not send a Terminator back through time. But then, of course, we'd have no movie, and Skynet would probably cease to exist. In any other film, this would be a problem, but the Terminator has absolutely no interest in how time travel works. It's interested in one thing, and that is freaking you the fuck out with its central concept. A task it succeeds at admirably, thanks to Stan Winston's special effects crew and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Part of me is always going to wonder what might have happened if Lance Henriksen had played the Terminator, the way Cameron wanted before Arnold joined this project. But I suspect the film wouldn't have held up nearly as well. Part of the reason you don't notice all of that time travel crap until the movie's over is because you spend all your time watching Arnold give what's arguably the greatest performance of his career. As a killer robot, yes, but goddamn if it doesn't work, and goddamn if this wasn't the best killer robot performance ever committed to film. For about 7 years. But put a pin in that, we'll get there. He may stick out in a crowd, but his overcalculated movements and sheer bulk are their own form of psychological warfare. And for once, Arnold's blank, pale, emotionless face.
The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes.
Become an asset to the film he's in instead of a liability. And he spends the whole time dancing on the edge of what we now know to call the uncanny valley, where fake humans are just real enough to make the few things they get wrong stand out all the more by contrast. Like the dead, fishy eyes in the fake Arnold head they used for a few close-up shots. That's a little rough to look at, and not for reasons the filmmakers wanted. But the rest of the time, Arnold's so damn good at being a killer robot, it became hard to see him as anything else. Even after you've seen Commando, or Predator, or Raw Deal? Nah, fuck Raw Deal. Total Recall. There you go. But Arnold gets all the press, to the detriment of his co-stars, all of whom deserve better careers. Linda Hamilton carries this entire film, transitioning from boring normal person to horror movie survivor more believably than anyone since Jamie Lee Curtis. I'd even go so far as to put her ahead of the first of the final girls. Michael Biehn's one of the best action stars of the 80s whose career fizzled out even before the 90s, when the rest of the genre fizzled out. His soldiers shouting and gritted teeth are already believable, showing why he got to sleepwalk through Aliens Marine Boot Camp. Even the background characters are memorably well acted. I'd watch the hell out of a cop drama anchored by Paul Winfield and Lance Henriksen. In fact, how come Paul Winfield never guest starred on Henriksen's own cop drama, Millennium? He survived 2004. No excuse, Chris Carter, that's another one on you. God damn it, you and Fox turned what could have been your best series into your red-headed stepchild. But I digress again. That's another rant for another time. Earl Bowen's Dr. Silverman is a preening fool, but I wouldn't have it any other way. To the point where he may be this series' secret MVP. The lone voice of sanity in this crazy world of time travel and infiltration units, which, ironically enough, might just make him the craziest motherfucker around. Really, the only thing that keeps this from being perfect are a few cheap shots. The rubber Arnold head, bits of the endoskeleton stop-motion performance, little continuity flubs, like the placement of people's arms between shots. And even then, it's like, gee, a low-budget movie from the early 80s didn't have the time or money to get all the coverage that it really needed? Gasp. Shock. Sound the trumpets. We have a revelation on our hands. Yes, it is startlingly similar to at least 2 stories Harlan Ellison wrote for The Outer Limits back in the 50s. But that's his cross to bear, not mine. Mine tells me this was the high point of early 80s science fiction, combining good action, directing, editing, makeup effects, and acting, with a distinctive mood that generations of filmmakers have tried and failed miserably to recapture. This came out the same year William Gibson's Neuromancer appeared in bookstores, kicking off what we now come to call cyberpunk. Personally, though, I want to live in the universe where the genre took its name from the club Sarah Connor flees to at the end of Act 1, tech noir. Like classical noir of the 40s and 50s, The Terminator is an astonishingly smart film disguised as a dumb one, showing you just how smart even supposedly dumb movies can be if they have a little ambition on their sleeve. Both apocalyptic and hopeful, it's made of 100% certified paradox, reconciled by a once-in-a-lifetime collection of talent, vision, and drive that leaves you fulfilled and wanting more at the same time. Which is good, because that collection reconstituted itself 7 years later, and turned out the gold standard, by which all subsequent sequels are measured still to this day. If I were the evil computer in charge of the world, it would be mandatory viewing for everyone before they got out of grade school. So go. Go now. Just go.
Is that it? Is that all you've got?
Oh, what? I'm supposed to break this thing down scene by scene, make a bunch of cheap jokes at its expense? Fuck that! Not only do I like this film, I actually respect it, and I respect my audience enough to know they can make their own cheap jokes when they go watch it. As they should.
And if you think that incoherent babble is going to convince anyone to follow your recommendations, then you're a bigger fool than you were when I arrived.
Well, at least then you'll have something to report back to corporate.
Fair point. But isn't there some aggravating superhero cartoon for you to rant about?
At this point, there's like 5 of them. Jesus Christ. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun dun dun.